what happened was Rasheen Khanad, who's a producer, he created Voices for Victory at the Victory Theater in collaboration with the Victory Theater. He's a producer of it. And you submit your plays to it. They wanted to celebrate BIPOC voices. And so they had been doing the series during COVID via Zoom. And he called me one day, he goes, I want to do this play. I like this play, and they want to present it in a way that, in hopes that it will be produced. And so they give they give it a reading, and it's not just a reading. They add to it. They have, little stage directions, little staging, and maybe some tech to it. So it's an elevated reading. And they chose my play. It's really as simple as that. Like, I think they do a play every 2 months, and mine just happens to be the first one that's in person because everything has died down somewhat. And so that's why we're inside of the theater. But normally this would have been done virtually, but this is such a huge play with the chorus and everything. I'm actually, like you said earlier, the timing is perfect because I don't know. Well, I have no idea. It could have worked great, but it's just the way the play is written. It's just one long string. It may not have had the same effect via Zoom. So I'm very grateful and lucky that I'm the first one to be back in the theater for this series. And it's something new, I think. I think he just started it, and I might be maybe the 5th or 6th one, I don't know, or 5th one. But yeah, I'm just happy that they chose me, and I'm happy that they chose this play because it's a very challenging play. It's important for programs like Voices of Victory because, unfortunately, the playing field is still not equal in theater. And so for one, like I said earlier, theater is a reflection of life. And we live in such a country with so many cultures and so many stories of what it means to be an American. But we seem to only, I shouldn't say focus, it's an imbalance. So we need to just balance it a little bit. It's like I've seen these stories over and over and over. And the issue for me is the culture. It's not whether or not there's a Black person who's playing in Death of a Salesman, because that story is still a story. It's important because when you get stories from BIPOC writers, you get a different point of view. And I think when we are able to put out more points of view from people from different cultures who are very much American. I am born and raised in the Midwest, Kansas and Oklahoma, and I am an American from generations and generations. But my American story, you don't see. And so when we put these stories out, it can only unite. It can only unite the United States, which is very, very divided culturally, I think. And it's because other people don't have to experience the American stories of people who don't look like them. They don't get that experience because we've been, for some reason, holding, or just not even thinking, because the powers that be all look the same as far as theater. And so once that changes, then all the stories, in my opinion, will be looked at as American stories, not, oh, this is a Black play, oh, that's an Asian play. I don't like that. It's an American story. They're Asian American, and they're telling their experience in America, which makes them more American than anybody. We all came here, except for the natives. And it's very sad, too, that even Native Americans who were here first, we don't see a lot of plays about them. And so what I like about this is just a teeny beginning, a very small step to start opening up for stories about forgotten cultures or, suppressed cultures that exist in America. We know they do, but we just somehow just want to pretend that they don't. And I think it does a disservice to all of us, to humanity, really. That's what makes this place so amazing. It's the Muslim Americans, the Korean Americans, and the Japanese Americans, the Black Americans and African Americans. That's what America is. How are you not telling all of those stories? We keep telling the same stories over and over, and it's like we can make theater so amazing here if we just be like, if each theater company is like, every year we're going to do a native, played by a Native American, Japanese American, Korean, Muslim American, African American, Irish American. Could you imagine? That's how I imagine, what artistic directors would think. And just do it every year is just common. It's like, we're never going to have a season where it's plays written by mostly all white males. And, so now having Voices for Victory is probably going to change the minds of people, I hope. People are starting to think, meaning the people in power, the people who are running these theaters, the people on the board of the theaters, or maybe they're thinking, they say, having the terms BIPOC and seat at the table, all these little phrases mean absolutely nothing. It's really about the action and about opening up your heart. If you're an artist, that's what artists do. Real artists do. That's what music does. People love music. People don't say, I can't listen to that because that's Black music, or they don't. If it moves you, it moves you. And I feel the same way about the theater. But I can't feel that way if I'm not exposed to anything else but something that's so restrictive. Do you know what I mean? Like so even if I had a subscription to something, I can only eat what they're feeding me. And so it's still, in a way, even my experience is controlled because the people that be are like, oh no, we're going to show them death of salesmen, we're going to do this. So though I still like those things, it's always, everybody feels good to see themselves reflected in theater, in art, period. And I think Voices of Victory, that Rashim created, it was his idea, Rashim Khanad, that he's on the precipice of making that happen. And this is his beginning. And I hope it becomes a huge thing where it won't even have to exist anymore, where he won't have to, have that, but it was created out of necessity. I think it's important for people to support theater, period, because small theaters, they are struggling, especially since the pandemic. They don't have the funding. Now you have to pay the actors like their employees. They have the grit and the gut, but we live in a capitalistic society and nobody can do anything without money, unfortunately. And we don't have governments yet, like in Europe, where they really support the arts financially and make sure that things are running. So understand that and invest. You invest in the experience. When people, the money that you spend at Starbucks, or, not trashing Starbucks, but those drinks are expensive, and you get you a drink in the daytime and it's hot and you get another one, that's $10 a day, 5 days a week. That's a ticket to support these small theaters that, need you to survive. It also gives, in my opinion, it gives the theater goer some kind of power, because I think a lot of theaters depend on their subscription base and their board, their huge donors. And so sometimes if you only got a few people that are donating lots of money, it gives that 1% the power to say, I'm not supporting this play. I'm not supporting this play. So when theater goers, invest financially, meaning buy a ticket, then you kind of get to control it, because you're like, I'm not buying tickets because you don't do this. It takes a huge amount of control away from maybe donors or sponsors who are only interested in sponsoring certain things where they want to control it. I think so. I would love for theater to start being in the hands of the people again. because what theater is for the people. So if it's for you, then you need to support it financially as well as show up and, you know, and see that your return on that investment, look at it as an investment, not as an expense. You know, it's the return is amazing, but we have to pour into something. And when you pour into something personally, you become a part of it, then you start to get to see the things that you want to see. But you can't rely on just a donor who has, you know, some rich millionaire, whatever, nothing wrong with that. But for me, when you get the people who are writing the checks for most of the things or saving these theaters, it gives them some power, and depending on who it is, they may abuse it, you know, because if somebody's going to donate, $10 million or $250,000 to a small theater, that's a lot. You can get at least 2 productions done really well. It might be, it might come with stipulations. And I think when we don't support theater financially, I think it puts them in that little box. It's like, well, he donated this and he wants to see a play about, it's like, but that's not what you're doing. So I think of it in terms of that as well. I mean, we need those donors, but we also need people to value theater, see the importance in this, in our culture. Because if it was gone, music, theater, everything we do, everything we see is done by an artist. And so we have to remember not to take it for granted, and that it costs to do what they do. It costs me to write these plays, meaning I still have to live because of the construct of this country and capitalism. If I didn't have to pay my rent and I could say, this is a space I want to lay in and let me do my thing, I'd be happy. If I could go out to the grocery store and just pick the things that I want, but that's not how it works. So until the system changes, we have to be a part of the system and make it work for all of us. And that includes theater artists, and that includes theaters. And if you want them to survive, and I think the pandemic has shown us that it can be taken away. It can all stop, So I'm hoping people will remember that when there was no access to theater or movies or, and how empty this country was. Please come and support Voices for Victory.